This whole thing with capitalism and unlimited growth is a romantic notion. It's unreal. It's an illusion. Then there's breastfeeding for our species, which blows everyone's mind. The average age of weaning, of stopping breastfeeding, is 4 years. Why? Because the immune system takes around that much time to develop to full adult levels. And start to notice, there's some other possibility. Their spirit starts to awaken. So they have to know that there's another alternative. You got to show them what that looks like, and that's what our films are intended to do. That's what the idea of the Evolved Nest is intended to do, to help people realize, we have a different heritage than this little tiny 1% of 1% time where we've been acting so strange. We have to get back to Earth. So go out in nature, feel connected, find a sit spot, know this place, and you open your senses and start to receive the wisdom around you. You need everyone to practice those things on a daily basis.
As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.
Today's guest, for me, it was a big riddle and challenge, because her background is just like so amazing and long that I didn't know what to cut out. And because it's so related to what Tech Leadership Lab stands for, being a good ancestor, having values, having ethics and morals in a way that we can role model for the young generation what we want to see in the world. So I think she is one of the most perfect guests for our shows ever. And she is a retired professor of psychology at the University of Notre Dame, but she has a long journey and history as a leading expert in morale, in development psychology, and her research is focused on how early life experiences affect us, and caregiving practices can shape the moral, character, and human flourishing. And she has a polymath background. And I love to say that because she studied everything from psychology and different fields of psychology to neuroscience and development, cognitive development and evolutionary biology and everything anthropology that can just set the tone, okay, from where we are coming, where we are today, where we did go wrong, and what we can do about it. So she is known for her groundbreaking evolved nest concept, or framework if you want. And Dr. Narvaez explores the connections about neurobiology, child development, and morality, advocating for practices that are so important and aligned with our heritage. And I believe that she left a lot of legacy inside the field of parenting, education, and policymaking, because she was involved in so many projects. She has 23 published books, but she has, I think, hundreds of journals and just extra reports and researches that she conducted through her years. And she advocated all the time about human nature and the promotion of how we can truly have well-being as humans. And through her research and public advocacy also, we have Dr. Narvaez has become a figure in discussion about how modern societies as today can better support human potential. There are so many books to name here. I might just also send here a link about her books, because it's better to see the long list and just choose yours. And you find this in the chat. And I also want to say that her latest books, The Evolved Nest, Nature's Way of Raising Children and Creating Connected Communities, it's out there. You can read it, and it's so connected to the way we see what's wrong with our society and how we can improve. And Professor Dr. Darcia, I'm so happy to have you with us today. And I would love to start with just you. Include what you want to know about your bio. It's so long, and I'm not sure where your interest is today, but I would love to share it with the world.
Well, it's really an honor to be with you in this important conversational group, and with the same kind of aims that I have of creating a world that's sustainable, regenerative, that focuses on well-being. My journey started when I was a young child, and I lived in different countries outside of the United States, and I saw children my age who were not in school. They were on street corners selling gum, and they were ragged and shoeless. And I wondered at that time, because I only saw the materialistic aspect, what was wrong? Why didn't they have what I had? And coming back to the States every couple years and seeing how different it was for children, not everybody, but in my class. And I just cried for those children. There was something wrong with the world. What is it? And it took me a while to get back to that question. I looked, I was in different fields of study to begin with. I was a music major and church organist and things, music teacher, Spanish teacher, had my own business. I went to seminary looking for the answers, a theological seminary, but that was not satisfying because I don't think it's original sin. That's why we're all messed up. And so I finally came to science, even though I had been raised fundamentalist Christian, and science is a no-no, and all this stuff. And then in science, it was like, oh, here's a tool that's going to help me find out moral development. And so I studied moral development. And even there, the answers weren't quite in the right direction either, because it was all about your head and what you think. And if you just think the right way, like a moral philosopher, and then apply it in your life with your will, then you're a good person. But that's not how it works either, right? So I read widely and discovered neurobiology, interpersonal neurobiology, our mammalian heritage of emotion systems, the hunter-gatherer childhoods, our hunter-gatherer civilization, which is our heritage for millions of years, and how different they raise their children and how happy and healthy they are on average. And so I thought there's something quite interesting here, and it's related to morality, to flourishing, to well-being. And that's then what I've been integrating for the last 20 years, the information there, because that's the problem. It starts with the lack of understanding of how you raise a human being to be well and wise. And that's what the Evolved Nest is about. And trying now in public education, I retired from academia so I could do public education, write books for the public, and create tools that we have at evolvednest.org. So that's my little introduction.
And this is absolutely fantastic because it will bring us to the main concept about Evolved Nest. This is a framework that you developed and you focused on. Today, we are in a society where basically almost everyone knows that if you have issues as an adult, it comes from your childhood. Now, especially in the entrepreneurial world from where I'm coming, it's a good thing, because if you had a lot of struggles, then you are just a better hustler as entrepreneur, but you'd still have a lot of trauma, that's for sure, and we can do much better. But we know the linkage. Now you're coming with the entire history of humankind through all of your researches and bringing all those domains together. And you say, okay, we need to be an evolved nest. So I would love to ask for you to, in a couple of words, just explain us what is an evolved nest, what is the importance for a thriving community, and how we can apply these principles, for example, at the societal level to foster a global solidarity where we act as one species or one family.
Yes, it's a really important question and kind of a deep question, but I'll try to, at least give an outline. The evolved nest, let me explain what that is. Every animal has a nest for its young that optimizes normal development. So it's set up to just provide the kind of support system in early life that you need as a creature, an offspring, to develop your fullness as that species. Humanity has its nest, and it's particularly intensive because we're born so immature. We look like fetuses of other animals until about 18 months to 2 years of age. We have, in the way you measure it in bones and how the head fuses, the skull fuses, and other ways. And so we really need an external womb experience. So the womb in the mother's body provides nutrition and support automatically. And so after birth, we need the same kind of thing. Just immediate response to needs because the brain is growing so quickly. It's only born with maybe at the most 25% of the adult brain volume. And so much has to grow, especially in the first 3 years, that if it's not in an optimal state of arousal for growth, feeling loved and content, then it's not going to grow properly. If the baby is distressed, things go awry. So the evolved nest for young children involves soothing perinatal experience. So that's gestation or pregnancy, that's calm, and the mother feels supported, the baby is wanted. Then birth is soothing. There's no separation from mother, no painful procedures, no circumcision. And then there's multiple caregivers that are there to support latching on, skin-to-skin contact. And that's very soothing. So the baby is introduced to the world very gently. Then there's breastfeeding for our species, which blows everyone's mind. The average age of weaning, of stopping breastfeeding, is 4 years. Why? Because the immune system takes around that much time to develop to full adult levels. And it's building the brain and body in so many ways we hardly understand it. It's thousands of ingredients that change with the needs of the baby, and it's alive, 80% alive, and on and on. Those two are only for children. The rest of the nest, and there's 9 components, are for all of us. We need a welcoming social environment where we feel like we belong and we matter. That we feel connected, always connected, never isolated, never punished into, separation. We all need affectionate touch, lots of affectionate touch. It keeps our body and brain in optimal arousal. Of course, it's this wanted touch. And no negative touch, no punishment, no spanking, slapping, hitting, because that shifts trajectory away from being connected, from being socially attuned. You get very self-centered then if you're punished. Then there's self-directed play, and that's free play, to run around, climb trees, and play with your friends in multiple ages and outside in the natural world, not organized sports, although that's better than nothing, because we need that to grow our fullness. And then multiple nurturers. We need this throughout life. We all need mentors at each stage of life, people who know more about this stage that we're now in. And these people help keep us centered, keep us feeling connected, because they're providing a responsive relationship, each of them, which keeps in the babyhood, keeps the baby optimally aroused for growth. And then finally, the last 2 are nature, immersion, and connection. We co-evolved with our natural world, the rest of the natural world, in particular landscapes around the world. And you get to know those creatures, those animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and you know their agency. They're sentient, they're alive. And science is now finally telling us this too, but this is ancient wisdom. And finally, the last is restorative healing practices, which is what we need as creatures who make choices and get out of balance more easily than other creatures. We need mental health to be restored, physical health, relational health, and then connection to the cosmos. We all need to feel like we're part of the universe and we have a gift to offer that's unique.
I would like to pinpoint a couple of things because it's super important and can create also frustration. So we normally would need, as far as I know, 21 months of gestation period. This changed based on when we became biped into walking on 2 feet. Otherwise, because we couldn't just give birth and the pelvis was not big enough. Once we started to move, these things just shrink. So that is one of the detachment problems that started through our evolution. Then we have breastfeeding for 4 years. Now, this is insane because I know in my case, it was so important at least to have that 1 year. But in today's modern society, that's still an exception. I managed, but it was very, very hard. But now when I think I could have had it for 4 years, it gives me a frustration as a mother. And it's almost like impossible if you are not part of an indigenous tribe and so on. And these are important elements that just gives us a little bit of clarity why we might feel disconnected, that something is just wrong. We don't have that kind of attachment and connection to our children as before. I would like you to, although, to pinpoint a little bit and clarify the sports, because this is important. I promote sports since an early age. I believe it's one of my saviors and everyone should do sports. What is the difference between group sports, organized sports, and just like spontaneous sports, and why does this matter?
Yeah, so free play is when you are with a partner or partners and you're creating as you go. So it's involves creativity of play, and you don't necessarily know how your partner is going to react. And so you have to be ready to respond. And that's true in organized sports at times, but this is ongoing. And if you get too aggressive with your partner, and you can see this when puppies or kittens play, and you hear one of them go, ah, that's a signal that the partner was getting a little too aggressive. You have to learn then to control your aggression. And all sorts of genes are being turned down by free play. I'm not sure they've studied organized sports for that. A lot of organized sports is a lot of waiting, right? You're sitting on the bench. There isn't a lot of play time. And it's so structured that you don't have to do a lot of executive functioning work. So free play promotes the executive functions, the prefrontal cortex, the ability to have empathy for others. This is what takes 30 years to develop in our in humans. So that's why boys mature more slowly, about 2 years behind females. And so that's why automobile insurance companies have higher rates for young men before age 25 or so, because they don't have the executive functions fully developed yet, where they can foresee what might happen and pay attention to consequences and organize their actions in different ways. Play helps this in all sorts of ways. And organized sports does some of that, but it's just not as good.
And where did we go wrong, in your opinion?
In terms of the evolved nest, what happened?
Yes.
Well, I think with hierarchical civilization, when we went to monoagriculture and shifted into inequality, where, there was some foods that were stored, and then you had to have people watch over the storage, and they became priests, and then other people were forced to labor in the fields and all that. What happens is much less of the nest was provided because people had to work. So hierarchy, just like our system today, capitalism forces everyone, and I mean, it's unfettered and all sorts of other influences, but people don't have the time to provide the nest. That's one of the problems today in the States. And the States has about the worst health outcomes of any high-income nation, and they're not providing the nest, very little of it, and even doing the opposite.
Yeah, and you are telling us that basically today, as we speak, the worst places to raise a child is America and war zones. Yeah, they are on that same space. And it's exactly the opposite of everything we just learned from you, what is happening today outside. And so it's so outrageous when we think that, in a way, if you are raising the healthy child to become a healthy adult, then the decisions will be different, right? We won't be so individualistic. And now this brings us to indigenous wisdom, where I would also like you to just approach the different perspectives, because of course there is the indigenous wisdom, and then there is the Western culture that evolved, and especially from Europe, and they just went different ways. And why do you think this happened? But now, starting from the indigenous truth, the culture, they are always about being stewards of earth. We are here, we are united, we are connected, and we see ourselves as an extension of nature or of the earth. And so these are key lessons that us today as humanity can learn from indigenous wisdom, and we can apply today to be good ancestors, one of the key themes TLS promoting. And so to build a sustainable future, what are those key lessons we could learn from Indigenous truth and wisdom?
Yeah. Well, this is, how many days do you have? Talk about
Oh,
this.
I would love to stay a week with you, to be honest, because these topics you covered, I mean, they are just like on top of my mind all the time.
Well, the first thing is the evolved nest is provided in traditional Indigenous or First Nation societies. There's no resistance. It's like even in traditional societies around the world that still exist, they provide this nest to a greater degree than the industrialized high-income nations. And when I speak to international audiences and talk about the evolved nest, Global South people say, oh, yes, 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 of course. Thank you for telling us about the science behind what we do. And the Global North people are going, what? I don't want to have to touch my children. Ah, breastfeeding? That doesn't matter. So there's all sorts of resistance because we've, narrowed our perspective about what a good human life is, what a good person is, what the source of our problems are. Original sin, right? Oh, we've always been selfish and aggressive. That's evolution or creation or whatever, the fall. And so there's this, automatic assumption that you're just being romantic when you talk about the evolved nest, um, rather than realizing that this whole thing with capitalism and unlimited growth is a romantic notion. It's unreal. It's an illusion. So Indigenous perspective and the life way, so it's a worldview that's manifested in the way people behave. It's about being a member of the Earth community. We're partners. We're not dominators. What? We're the younger siblings of Earth. On Earth, we have much to learn from the trees, the river, the mountains. Mosses have been around for 400 million years. So to have an Indigenous orientation is to be humble, to realize that we are not the superior creature on the planet, far from it, and to always be concerned about controlling that ego that sometimes gets too big and starts to think we can do more than anyone else, or any other kind of person on the planet other than human. So what we've done in my colleague Four Arrows has been working on the worldview manifestations for quite some time, many years. And we have a chart at which you can go to and find. Maybe I'll put a link to it in the chat later. But the worldview manifestations, there's 50 different ones that contrast the Indigenous perspective with the dominant worldview. And you can see, well, let's see, which one do I see in my life, or which one do I kind of assume is normal? And then you can notice, there's a lot of stuff going on that dominant worldview. And you know what? That doesn't look as good as the other one. And you can start, we have this worldviewliteracy.org site where you can actually do some studying of it, take the survey before and after. And so there's so many different precepts in the book that he and I wrote, published in 2022. We take 28 of the precepts and take a quote from Native peoples and discuss them back and forth in dialogue to help people then get a handle on what it means and how to apply it in their lives. So it's, for example, I could tell you a couple of them. One is ceremony as life-sustaining. So daily ceremony, which is that restorative healing practices I mentioned. The sense of mutual dependence, that we're all interdependent with the natural world, the trees. We need the trees, we need the forests, or else our climate will get very unstable as it's becoming now. Conflict resolution is a return to community. It's not punishment. You don't send people away because the teenagers stole something. No, you bring them into the circle and find out what went wrong. What was the community responsibility for how that teenager went awry? And how do we restore relationships and trust? And so those are the kinds of things we discuss. Those are the kinds of things that contrast with the dominant worldview.
I mean, I so love this topic, and I believe that everyone who is in the room, and I want to welcome everyone who joined us later. We have an amazing community, and what I mean by that is about the focus on the good, on restoring what is just natural. You're talking so much common sense here, what we feel inside, right? We have the truth inside, but we don't act as it because society just pushed us in a capitalist direction where it's all about money today lately. I mean, money was designed as a tool, but today it's our master. And as you said, the difference between indigenous truth and, let's say, a capitalistic world where you can just let the homeless on the streets, and this is cruelty. Sometimes we are acting better with animals than with other humans that are next to us in pain, and we just don't care. And but we sense that something is not okay. Especially, I see this from children. I mean, children who ask, don't you do anything about that man on the streets? What can we give him or her some food or something? So we do have this in us if we start to question our inherited truth, our indigenous truth, you know. And so this is so, so important. I would love to feel connected with everyone in this room, and truly I am actually. I feel like an extended family. I don't see that I'm here in Romania and I have an ecosystem of TLL around the globe and on every continent today, a big ecosystem of people. And that if I'm here, the border doesn't define me. I don't care. Your color doesn't define me. Your age doesn't define me. I see you as an extension, as Indigenous wisdom says, and that is very, very important for us to know how we can function together. So I would start to discuss a little bit morality. This is a word we don't mention enough, but is so important in global citizenship model. To solve our existential threats today, especially climate, but all the other SDGs, but this is, let's say, one of the urgent ones. And so it means to think as one. And in your research in neurobiology and morality, you discuss the development of moral capacities. How can understanding and fostering these capacities help us promote the idea of global citizenship and advance the resolution of the SDGs?
Yeah, a big question again. Um, so it all goes back to the evolved nest again, because the evolved nest is designed to foster optimal human development, which is a cooperative nature, a flexible, attuned nature that is intelligent, socially and morally intelligent. So that comes from, again, keeping the baby in a calm state while they're growing and, interacting with them, always in arms. Babies need to be in arms of somebody or on bodies 24/7, so that there's no disruption in that development. And so they always feel connected. They always feel secure. Once in a while there'll be a loud noise or something, and then you have to calm them down. But on average, they're always feeling safe. And what we do in the modern context is we distress babies. We leave them alone. We leave them strapped into carriages and portable things and strollers, and and we even intentionally distress them with sleep training, putting them on a schedule for feeding. This is craziness because you're disrupting them. You are now increasing cortisol. When distress occurs in all of us, cortisol levels go up. And cortisol, if it's at high levels, like if you leave a baby to cry for any extended period, cortisol levels can get so high they melt the connections between the brain cells. And you can see this in minds of depressed people. They just have fewer connections. And we also know that cortisol levels, when they're extended at higher levels, seed inflammation in the body. You are now seeding ill health in that child. Physical ill health, mental ill health, social ill health, and I say moral ill health. Because when you're undercared for, your lack of nest in early life, your system gets easily off kilter. It never gets quite centered to be virtuous, which is where your gut, your heart, your spirit, your mind are all coordinated and you're there and you're present and you're not preoccupied. No, instead, things are disrupted and you never got the co-regulation you needed as a baby so that things grow well. And so then when you see threat, and you're more likely to see threat because you were in a threatening environment, left alone, so that your dreams and all these noises and things make you think, it's a scary place, right? And so your whole system the stress response goes into getting triggered so easily. And when the stress response kicks in, your blood flow shifts away from your higher order thinking to your muscles. So you can run away or fight. That's just what happens with a stress response. And it's good for, single situations if a bear is chasing you or something. But it's not good to have this all the time, every time you're around people, right? So that's the inflammation again. But it also shifts your perception. Your perception narrows. It's like, how can I be safe? What's safe? What's going to make me safe? You don't have this openness and flexibility that is part of our heritage as a human species. So morality then, you learn that morality is about us against them, domination or submission. You're susceptible then to authoritarianism. It seems right because that's what you know. Your body knows that. Your body knows you have to fight because you had to cry so much to get attention, to get your needs met. Oh, you got to punch them out. Or you learn to submit because finally people showed up after you quieted down and you got some needs met. Not all of them, obviously. And so you learn now this inability, this inflexibility of needing a very structured space. And you like scripts. You like to know exactly what to do. And authoritarianism gives you that. Just follow the strong leader. Whatever they say, that's fine. Phew, I don't have to think about it. Phew, you're off the hook because you don't have all the skills and the intelligence to know how to live with a shifting landscape. You can't see, you can't notice. Your perception is narrow. Anyway, so all that leads to a morality of self-centeredness, morality of aggression, a morality of domination. Self-protectionism, I call it.
Yeah, and because now we want to also connect the dots and how we can advance the SDGs and consider global citizenship. Let's take today's environment and circumstances. We have exactly what you described, and you answered 3 of my extra questions I just had in my mind. Exactly what happens when a baby just cry. And today there are cultures, especially the Western culture, just let the baby to cope at that young age and just cry through the night. I mean, how much damage we do. And you explained this so well with the rise of cortisol and what does it do in our brain. So let's say that we, humanity, the adults, are a little bit damaged today. And so in order to fix us and naturally start to consider that we are united and we need to solve things as one, not divided by borders, would you see connectivity, connection, creating those kind of communities again as nests, but for adults could be a solution to naturally start to see a better future for us?
Yeah, my book, Neurobiology and the Development of Human Morality, this book, it's won some awards. The longest chapter is what to do if you were not nested, essentially. So there's a lot of pieces there. I think we have to help individuals realize that they don't have to be like this. This is not humanity's purpose, normality. And so that's why we have to change their imagination. We have several films. I guess I'll find the links for those to put in the chat. Several films to help people realize, oh, there's an alternative. And then it starts to awaken their spirit that's been suppressed by the lack of support that they've had, the isolation and mistreatment, the trauma, the undercare. They start to notice, oh, there's some other possibility. Their spirit starts to awaken. So they have to know that there's another alternative. You've got to show them what that looks like. And that's what our films are intended to do. That's what the idea of the Evolved Nest is intended to do, to help people realize, oh, we have a different heritage than this little tiny 1% of 1% time where we've been acting so strangely. So part of it, so first start with the alternative vision, and then you need some tools to heal. So individuals are easily stressed, as I mentioned, especially in the United States. And so they have to start to pay attention. When am I getting stressed? What is that? And learn techniques to calm down and to practice that so that they don't trigger when something isn't what they expect or somebody has a different idea. And so that they can actually be present, emotionally, relationally present to listen, to receive, to honor the diversity around them. And then in my classes with students, there's a lot of students who are depressed and anxious. So the self-calming is good, but that's not really enough. And it's not enough to pull you out of depression. You need to learn to relate. We have a lot of people that have grown up with screens instead of relational face-to-face enjoyment. So you have to build a capacity for social joy and being together. Of course, all the global South people say, yeah, we know all this. But the global North is like, what? I got to talk to people. I have to touch them. Oh. So what we did in my classes is we played folk song games. So things like, a hunting we will go, a hunting we will go. We'll catch a little fox and put him in a box, and then we'll let him go. And you're making a bigger and bigger circle, and people are moving, and they're singing, and they're laughing, and they're touching. And it's a structured way to help them open up it's a playful, structured play in order to help them release some of that fear of others, to grow all the capacities for attuning to others, because you have to sing together, right? So music is marvelous for helping people heal. There's various ways to use music. Anyway, maybe you have follow-up questions.
Yes, of course. And I encourage everyone to check out your videos on YouTube. You can just search for Darcia Narvaez, and you will find multiple aspects around and interviews around the evolvedness, because this is such a topic that every one of us is very important. It's interested to uncover. And this brings us a little bit to go further, and maybe we will have more time to touch base a little bit what you discussed, the RCO mindset and concept. We had our first year anniversary just like 1-2 weeks ago, and a tech leadership lab, and it was the first time when we revealed the concept or CEO. I would want to clarify just quickly that the CEO, it doesn't mean a corporate CEO who runs everything in an autocratic hierarchy style, but it means also from a startup perspective. I am an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, also the base, and I had multiple startups. I mean, today we can consider startups of 10 years, even startups. So you have this kind of initiative, agile mindset to evolve. And evolution, like technology, is our tool to evolve faster into the future, to create evolved societies. The same CEO, it's not the Earth CEO, it is Earth CEO. We can all be Earth CEOs to guard, to be good stewards for our future, and always consider that sustainability for us means sustainability for the future generations, 7 ahead if we consider indigenous wisdom. So being an RCO means when you wake up in the morning, and especially if you are a decision maker, you consider that your decisions will reflect many lives. Not just financially because you have the money, but also through impact. And so you need to consider, okay, what I want to say, what I want to do today, it will impact other generations. It will impact today, the surrounding, the society, and those who are looking at me at the television. That's why we want to illustrate and portray role model leaders as you are. And you are a light in the darkness sometimes, where we need that type of leaders who show us, hey, you are concerned about me, you care about me, you love me. And this is how we should consider leadership going further. So from this Earth CEO mindset, I wanted to clarify, because I had a couple of backlashes. Oh, this is so corporate. It's not, but for the sake of simplicity and brevity, it's important to find concepts people just understand what it's all about without going in details, and then you lose the main aspects of moving the needle forward. So if you have this Earth CEO and it's tasked to leading and nurturing our planet, what should our guiding principles be, in your opinion? How can this shift in perspective and accelerate our progress towards the sustainable goals?
Well, I think the first thing is to put human well-being and actually life, the well-being of life first, central, rather than the well-being of money, which is we have so many laws that are oriented to the keeping of money and hoarding of money and protecting, capitalism in its many predatory forms, especially in the United States. So we have to understand then that that's killing us and the planet. So that's where the mind shift is so important. We're stuck in this system that sort of just keeps going. It's run away now with these ways of being, of acting that are so destructive. So we have to bring people back to the local, to localization, to finding ways to be economically rooted there in their locale, in the well-being of this landscape, of this set of people, this community, rather than the global kind of mess of that pulls us away from the local. Uh, and so our ancestral wisdom, then we have to honor, we have to understand it. We have deep ancestral wisdom in the evolved nest. And part of that ancestral wisdom is to honor the future generations. And so decisions need to be made with the future generations in mind, that you don't use up this resource for yourself or for your business without concern for, 100, 200, 300 years ahead. How do we, use resources in a way that's sustainably or regenerative across many generations? There's so many levels of things to change, and one of the things that that would not be tolerated in our ancestral context, which is hunter-gatherer civilization, and we spent 99% of our history in that kind of civilization. It's only this 1% we've kind of been in this hierarchical, coercive system where people really are not free in various ways. And in hunter-gatherer civilization, big egos are not tolerated. So if a hunter gets a big animal, the other hunters will say, it's so small, we should go back and get a rabbit would be bigger, and then when they're asked, why do you keep teasing, and they tease until the hunter starts to laugh and everybody laughs. Why do you do that? And they say, if we didn't do that, he would become dangerous. And we know now today that in psychology experiments that people who have more money, more privilege, tend to have less empathy for others. They start to feel entitled and they can do whatever they want and they, take risks with other people's money and the risks on the planet. So we have to learn how to relearn from the hunter-gatherer civilizations and the groups that still exist in Africa, who show us how you do this. You tease away that inflated ego when it comes up, and you don't honor it and celebrate it, right? That's the opposite. But we're all traumatized, and our values and our understanding of things is kind of all twisted from our early trauma.
Now this will bring me to a little bit of controversial question, because of course, when it comes to history of humankind, there are aspects we know, well, some not so much. And this is an undergoing research project for all of us. And when it comes to hunter-gatherers and then the agriculture that just came upon us around 10,000 years ago and shifted everything to hierarchical model and more egocentrical hoarding style of life, I want to ask you, because, it's exactly like with climate. In climate, there are still naysayers who don't take the science, who they don't want to study the science to see that, okay, this is human touch here. It's not just natural. The same goes here. Some affirm that the hunter-gatherers were not exactly equality society, and even you can see in some hunter-gatherer societies today. And so how do you see, based on your research, what do you think it's the truth here? And especially when it comes to gender equality, because this is one of the key aspects about where we are today in man's world and how it was in the past. And here is a lot of controversy. I don't know if I should believe it or it's also part of the propaganda. So what's your research saying to us?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have a lot of people who get a lot of attention who misunderstand the data. They collapse the data from the past. So there's multiple kinds of societies. So there's simple hunter-gatherers, bands, foragers. So those are the ones I'm referring to. They don't stay in one place permanently. They move around. They're mobile. So they don't have very many possessions. They have nothing to fight about, essentially, except maybe a man gets jealous of another man and a woman and such. But otherwise, there's no war or anything. That doesn't make any sense. And they're very much into sharing. Everything is shared. So if anthropologist comes along with a backpack of things, they'll just take the backpack and share everything around. And when she comes back, she'll find her sweater that was on this one person's back when she left is on someone else's back when she comes back. So it's just this cycle of sharing, and which is the way the natural world works. It's a gift economy all around in movement. Now, what happens with people like Steven Pinker and others, they collapse data. They put small band hunter-gatherers with complex hunter-gatherers. They have horticulture, or they have some animals. Or and then there's chiefdoms, which have, excuse me, somebody's in charge, and clans. These are things where you do have things to fight about because it's you start to have possessions. And then the city states, of course, is where it really gets into that mono-agriculture and property and the kind of imperialism that you have to keep going and taking other people's lands and resources because the city can't self-sustain on its own. So the people who say, oh, we're so much better off now than we were in the past, are not paying attention to the nomadic foragers, the small band hunter-gatherers that I'm referring to as our baseline. And that we know that the Radical Anthropology Group and University College London has weekly seminars or lectures on these groups today. So these are actual data collected today from people who are small band hunter-gatherers.
No, this was very helpful. I didn't know the difference exactly this way, and I'm glad that you clarified. So every time when possession comes into play, it is like with money, it starts to distort and it makes you very competitive about gaining more. And it just makes you less collaborative with your peers around. Very interesting. So this brings us to neurobiology and collective well-being, about how we can create new policies that benefit the collective well-being humanity. So you understand the neurobiological basis of human needs, and you study this for so long, and behavior. So if we need to attach this and translate in large-scale challenges, such as climate change and social inequality, what would you teach policymakers and legislators to do in order to have a, I don't even know, because it's a problem, it's a complex problem, to just redo the damage that happened with our collective well-being?
Yeah, well, that's again the million-dollar question of how do we start to change and alter our future. There are initiatives all over the world doing different things. My focus is on reminding people of the evolved nest, and that's where we start. So that's the bottom-up aspect of how we raise a child to be a compassionate, wise human being. And that means that throughout their growing years, they have to be in that evolved nest kind of environment. Excuse me. And so that's the bottom up part. But the top down then is what you're sort of talking about. How do we change the adults? How do we change their minds? And how do we help them change practices and institutions? Sorry, getting over a cold.
I'm sorry, you have a cold. Yeah, it's that period of the year. Yeah,
Yeah,
understood.
weather changing. Yeah. So we've got a lot of people in charge who have this limited, narrow view. So they need to honor ancestral wisdom and indigenous life ways and look at the data on that they are more responsible, more at least in the traditional societies that haven't been terribly traumatized, are better at caring for the earth and keeping it in a state of well-being. And instead of taking the scientists and the modernists' ideas, oh, I have this model and we're going to apply it now to take care of the wolves in this environment. But that doesn't work, right? Because they don't know how the wolves are in that environment. But the indigenous folks who live there know. And so you have to bring those things together. So this is responsible indigenous and Western science collaborating. And that's sort of how we need to do with whatever sustainable goals that we're talking about, to honor our deep wisdom from the practices. But we're in an environment that, the Western world has been dominated, according to Ian McGilchrist's terms, by the left brain. The left brain is all about, control, manipulation, linear thinking. It doesn't see the life and the dynamism of life. That's the right brain that does that. And what we undermine in early life when we don't provide the nest is the right brain development. And we stick children into schools where the left brain is what's trained up, not their intuitions about how to, recognize the signals from the earth, from the trees, the birds, and so on. No, just take this test and then you'll see how smart you are. So we have to reorder our schooling. Schooling needs to focus on living well on earth in the particular locale, because each landscape is different in what it needs to thrive, and get back to being members of earth. We're kind of floating above earth. The Western culture, the dominant modernist culture, it just doesn't feel like it's part of earth. That's part of the detachment and separation that's been enhanced by the way we raise kids in the last few hundred years. So we have to get back to earth. So go out in nature, feel connected, find a sit spot, know this place, and you open your senses and start to receive the wisdom around you. We need everyone to practice those things on a daily basis. We need babies in boardrooms. What do babies do? They lower testosterone. We evolved to live pretty much 24/7 in multiple age, multi-gender groups. That's the small band forging communities. Not separated genders, not men going off to a boardroom and spending all their time with other guys. Testosterone levels go up when you separate men from the rest of us. And so babies in the boardroom will bring that testosterone back to normal levels. And you'll start to think, oh, how is this going to affect the baby's life in the future? So there's different things to do. I think we have to do it in a conscious, embodied way and not just talk, but actually practice.
I wonder if you would be able to answer a couple of questions from the audience. It would be nice
Yeah.
to interact with them a little bit. But before that, and to give you a little bit of relief from, I know how it is to have a cold, and I so appreciate you would join us today. And I think that you truly aimed the RCO concept, and you are one of those guides for us who brings science into and common sense together to show us the way, hey, we need to go back and we can also reassess these things, and this is what we can do. I believe you truly have a lifelong mission, and I wish you much more ahead to bring a lot of contribution about us and creating more global well-being. And for that reason, I wanted to surprise you today, and also because we started the RCO titles to give them to amazing people who truly contributed in one way or another, or they are role model leaders for the world. I want to give you the RCO honorary distinction today. And this will be also sent as a certificate through email. So it has the Unicode. And I just wanted to thank you for everything you did for us.
Oh, well, thank you so much. What an honor. I'm really, really, really touched. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that being said, we have some questions and we'll take it in order. I mean, everyone in this room are amazing. I'm so glad to see you. And the first one will be Glenn, please. You are first on my screen, so please join us.
Okay, thank you very much for all these very inspiring thoughts. I think the idea of the nest is the idea of the community. If you take the bee and the beehive, the bee is important and the beehive is important. But what is the real unit? The real unit is the beehive. The bee is an organ in the beehive. They are organs. So what we need is to see how the element, the bee, and the community connects. And what the big issues of humanity, the big problems of humanity comes by breaking the community, by desocializing, detribalizing, which I heard in the presentation. And actually, there is a difference between individual and person. Individual comes from indivisible, from atom. Person means mask, persona, and that is the interface with the group. So what happened, they changed the person into an individual, and that was the worst crime that was happened to us because that created a lot of problems for humanity. And the reference that Dacia made to the indigenous people is so important because, I mean, there is a connection, like you see in Ubuntu. You know, I don't know why you know the Ubuntu philosophy, the
Right.
most beautiful philosophy that brings together. I exist to you, where there's a connection between person and community. So I think that what the big challenge for humanity is to go back to community. And that means that we have to break with individualism, with modernization, with modern civilization, because modern civilization, in a sense, and I argue that in my life work, my book, I put it in the chat, is to the modern, it failed as a project for humanity because it disconnected from evolution, disconnected from the driving force of evolution, which is life seeking for life. So I'm so happy to hear this reflected and said by Darcia.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn. And please feel welcome to just share everyone here, your LinkedIn handle, because I would love you to also be connected with each other. Glenn is doing a lot of amazing work with his master brain mind groups as well about how we can enhance humanity from Aruba and Suriname, and Amazon. And so he has a lot of knowledge and another community that mingles now with DLS community. And this is what we are doing as an ecosystem. We are bringing together different knowledge and wisdom from different parts of the world and organizations who are doing this for a long time, and see where is the light, what we can do faster, because the question is what we can do today as the most effective next step to solve the SDGs sooner in time and be good ancestors. And I'm super curious to have, yes, Nazanin with us right now, and also ask your questions, because I saw that you put a couple of good comments and questions in the chat. So just choose one.
As a pregnant mother candidate, I wonder if you please re-explain how shall the breastfeeding is better than the popular opinion.
Nazanin will be a mother very, very soon. So she's very, very personally interested in this topic.
Well, breast.
Yeah, due to empathy, I had to say.
Yeah.
When I say it happens the same time.
We have the flu here in the room. Yeah, but we love each other, that it counts, so we will heal sooner.
So breastfeeding is amazing. It's has thousands of ingredients that are human specific. Infant formula is just a few dozen ingredients that are not human. And and it's the same flavor all the time. Breast milk changes with what the mother is eating, so it trains up the palate of the child who like different foods. Instead of training them for fast food, which is what I think infant formula does. Breast milk is tailored to the sex of the child, so it's different for boys and girls. It is also the actual movement of breastfeeding shapes the jaw and palate to be wide enough for all the teeth, and so that there aren't sleep problems later. We have enormous sleep problems around the world, in part because bottle feeding doesn't create the same kind of exercise needed for jaw development, and then you have all crooked teeth, and you have sleep problems because the palate is too narrow. Breast milk is thin. Our species milk is thin, not thick like a predator's milk. Like if it's a lion, the lion has thick milk because the mother has to go hunt and leave the offspring alone for a while. Our milk is thin, so it needs to be ingested frequently. For a newborn, every few minutes, every 20 minutes perhaps, or even less than that, because it's washing the brain with the biochemicals that build the brain in a proper way. such as the precursors for serotonin. Serotonin is one of the neurotransmitters that's related to intelligence, but also not getting depressed. And so breast milk is fostering then the brain and body to be healthy and wealthy and wise. And it needs to be that long because the milk of the mother is actually creating antibodies for any infectious agent in the region. So if there's some illness that's coming around, the mother's breasts will manufacture an antibody for it. So it protects the child. Breast milk also provides a film in the gut, which is the primary source of our immune system, to protect the gut from invasive viruses and bacteria. So it's protective in so many ways, and you don't want them to feed other things at the same time because that'll break the film and make the child more vulnerable. So there's just so many things about breast milk. We hardly understand it still. They keep discovering new things. So we need to honor our children with it if we can. Yeah.
How about classic opinion about breastfeeding timing? There is as if the children or the baby is sleeping, we shall wake and breastfeed every 3 hours.
Well, breastfeeding mothers and the research my colleague did, James McKenna, and I'll put his website in the chat in a moment. The breastfeeding mother bed shares with the baby. She won't roll on the baby. She knows where the baby is. And the baby will just reach over to breastfeed, or she'll, in a half asleep, turn. And so they have a good coordinated system of breastfeeding, of feeding, where the mother doesn't have to wake up. Unlike if you feed formula, you have to get out of bed, you have to da 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 da. If you do it right, you have to boil everything, and you don't prepare it ahead of time. You don't use the microwave. You have to, heat it on the stove. It takes like a half an hour. My students did all the analysis of this. Costs a lot more to feed formula. It's really important for the baby to have the say in when they feed, because they have an inner compass for well-being, for growth, and finding their way as a species normal human being. So you don't want to put them on a timer, because then you're raising cortisol levels, right? You're distressing them. No, don't distress. Keep them calm so that they're growing in the proper, compassionate way.
I think I just got an idea that we might, if you want to, Darcia, to create a new episode just for Q&As, basically framing what we discussed today and then just taking questions, because you're bringing so important aspects. We don't have any other source to just document. Like what you shared with us today, it was absolutely awesome. Especially that you distill from multiple research and data. You just bring us exactly what works and what you know to work. I appreciate you so much. This was absolutely intriguing, interesting. I learned so much today, and I want to continue with another episode for our community. And in the meantime, please connect with DLL if you are not connected with Tech Leadership Lab. We are here to truly create a sustainable future for us all. And we are engaging and building constantly an ecosystem of all stakeholders, from researchers to academics, to investors, to startups, to founders who are solving a problem inside the SDG spectrum, in order to do what we can and do the due diligence that right decision makers at the global scale are taken. And we can move fast enough to be good ancestors for the next generations. And that is our mission here. So we need all the help we can get, but we want to get to the next level as well. And I would want with this time, Darcia, to be the last one who ends this. If you have a last message to the world, let's say that you have all the money and influence in the world, and you need to take some decisions for us to be good nesters and turn our projections into a good sense. What would you do? What would you transmit to us as an Earth CEO, for example?
Well, I would give every parent with a new child paid parental leave. We don't have that in the United States. And so that they can be home with the baby for 3 years. and have also education about the evolved nest. Because I understand some places with the parent paid parental leave, actually the parents don't provide the nest. They just go off and do other things. So we need both in education and opportunity for parents. And that means, you know, having a good income so they can do this, and paid parental leave allows that. How's that?
Wonderful. And with that being said, until the next time, I wish you all the best in the world. Bye for now.
In a world yearning for change, there exists a community of visionaries and innovators, united by a common goal to solve Earth's biggest challenges. From climate action to quality education, we're tackling all 17 Sustainable Development Goals reassembled as 10. We embody sustainability, unity, and empathy. Our character and reliability shine as beacons of hope. As role models for future generations, we're building a world where wisdom and consciousness rise, harmonizing life with nature and all species. Join us. Together, let's create a balanced, sustainable future for all.